So hey, Cheney, really good to see you today. This is my business partner, Ian, with sort of the two halves, if you like, of your people associates. And we are really excited to have you on because we know that there's, so much going on at the moment out there in sort of HR and talent, and particularly, around some of the subjects that you cover and talk about. So welcome.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
So tell us then a little bit about Find Your Flex. When was the business started, and by who? Is it just you, or do you have other people involved?
So we launched back in 2017, and it was myself and my husband kind of came up with the idea and the concept, just purely responding to something that had happened in our personal lives with our firstborn daughter, our first experience of working, or the need to work flexibly, and finding that actually at a senior level there wasn't a lot on offer out there. My background is recruitment advertising. I've worked in local, regional, national press for 16 years prior to that, so I knew that those jobs existed, but they just weren't really very good at promoting them or highlighting the fact that they were flexible in the job copy. So I launched Mummy Jobs initially. It went live in May of 2017, and it was very much geared towards senior women and trying to find flexible roles for them as a job board. But it was a job board with purpose. It was a bit around community. It was around how do we support these women into senior roles that can be worked flexibly. So we had career coaches on there, we had chat rooms, and we had obviously all the social side that went with it. And it wasn't a job board that we could kind of go live with and say, hey, give us all your jobs, because there was just so much education that needed to be done with employers. And that's kind of really the starting point that we went from. And about 6 weeks after that, after we launched Mummy Jobs, my husband was like, I did the whole shared parental leave. He actually ended up being off for 8 months with B, whereas I only did 5. And, he was saying there needs to be a community for dads because there's not really any support out there for dads who decide to take shared leave. So we launched Daddy Jobs 6 weeks later. And then a few months after that, we went viral for the first time. And we had 1.2 million people get in touch with us over a 10-day period, just relating to a LinkedIn post that I put out there, sort of saying, how have we got to this point in society where we're devaluing women that much that they feel that they need to pay to access work because of the amount of multi-level marketing companies that were out there preying on these women. I was like, it's not really good enough, businesses. We know you've got these roles, you need to step up, you need to start promoting yourself as flexible. And it obviously really resonated with a lot of people, but a lot of the people getting in touch with us weren't parents. And were asking if they could still apply for the roles on our platform, to which we obviously said, yes, of course you can. We'd only built Mummy and Daddy Jobs, I guess, for selfish reasons. So we kind of went away. Obviously, Helen had come on board with us by that time. And we really had a good rethink about actually what is the future of work? What is the future for flexible working? Is this actually the turn point moment for societal change, and to look at these 1950s modalities that we're all working to and actually look towards a more flexible, a more output-based working. Findyourflex.co.uk came about, and the rest is history, because that very quickly became the lead brand. And we now have some, really interesting data around who's actually using the platforms, and can really try and start to steer that narrative away from it being just part-time or just for mums. It's not, it's for everyone. And that's kind of where we need to get to, sort of socially.
Okay, it's just like you say, it's such a growth area, isn't it? So the business really then, it's for everybody. So as you said, it started with like mums and dads, but now it's for everyone, which is great. And so you talked a bit about your background being in sort of recruitment advertising, so you sort of knew the job board world really well, and kind of maybe how to get to those companies. But how did you actually get the business off the ground? I mean, did you need support? How did that come about?
Well, I didn't, because I think my most recent experience, certainly since we moved to London, so I guess I had 10 years in recruitment advertising, while I was only really dealing with advertising agencies. And unfortunately for ad agencies, and to access sort of businesses through those guys, you kind of need to have a tried and tested model, which obviously we didn't have at that point. So a lot of it was just going out and having really frank discussions with businesses, getting the doors open, trying to find the right people to talk to, and really sort of to see what the appetite out there was for flexible working. I think we very quickly understood that we needed to engage with our communities and talk to them about what it is that they wanted, because I think, you know, the whole part-time thing, when people refer to flexible working, I think that's the default setting that a lot of our IHR teams at that time were kind of defaulting to. So we did a little bit of research with our social audiences, just sort of saying, look, if you had any option of the types of flexible working you could do, what would it be? And so from that, we came up with these like 6 pillars of flexible working. And that's essentially what we took out there with the research back from our community. So I was saying, you know, actually, the majority of people who are seeking flexible working still want to work full time, but they want to have that flexibility around maybe start and finish times, maybe one day of the week working from home, just having that opportunity to be treated like a grown-up, that they can handle and do their job, but on a flexible way. It was about moving away from presenteeism. And I think once we kind of had that data and we could really go out and converse with employees in a new way, you know, like I say, it was all about re-education, and it was, you know, it took us a long time before we made that first sale and got people to sort of jump on board and really see what we're trying to do, because it wasn't just about being a job board. It was never just about being a job board. It was about that, I guess, the bigger societal values that kind of sat around it. We wanted businesses to come on a journey with us. We wanted them to share their journeys with us as they were moving to becoming more flexible, more output based. And I think actually we managed to do that fairly well in the first few years. I think I remember the first big contract we got was with Aviva when they came on with us, and I got to speak at a few women in insurance events and things like that. And those guys came on specifically from a technology standpoint, trying to get more women into technology and working for them. And, you know, they were willing to share their story. And I think that's the biggest thing with us, because we do have this huge social community. We want to share what businesses are doing well, you know, the businesses that are focused on change. That's what we try and share out. And that's how we drive people back to the site to apply for the jobs with those businesses. It's about that employer value partnership, I guess, with us.
So
Fantastic.
that's brilliant. I mean, and you really start to see the sort of groundswell once you get a big brand on board like that.
Absolutely.
What have been the highlights since?
The highlights since, I guess, we've won a few awards, which is always nice to have your work recognised. I think, you know, we've had a hard 3 years trading, given we've had Brexit, and then COVID-19, and people always think, oh, I bet you've had a good year because of COVID-19, but actually everyone stopped recruiting pretty much. Yeah. Even the ones that were still recruiting didn't need to advertise because there was that many people wanting to work. So it has been a tough trading period. So I think one of the big things is that we've survived. That's always nice. We're still here. You know, 12 months ago, I was seriously considering, you know, starting to send my CV out and sort of think about, you know, other ways to bring in money, because at the end of the day, it's all well and good trying to start your startup, but you still need to keep a roof over your head and keep the kids fed and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think I'm glad we're still here, and I'm glad that actually, you know, COVID-19 more than anything has allowed us to really shift the conversation and the narrative. I think that's what I'm most proud of at the minute, is the fact that we reached 50-50 on gender parity on the platform. All of the other flex platforms, or, you know, time-wisey type platforms and working mum kind of platforms, they're all very much still female led, and it's still very much that part-time focus. You know, I think we're really good at changing the dial, you know, showing businesses that actually this is a benefit for everyone, not just parents. So for example, we've got to, as I said, we were 50-50 on the male-female split, which is also great for obviously the gender pay gap and all of that kind of stuff, and getting more men to work flexibly means that we can move that together even more quickly. You know, 62% of our audience now are not parents, and I think that's the biggest shock to employers, that actually they need to leave their unconscious bias at the door when they start thinking about flexible working. So we know, for example, only 8% of our audience has a child that's aged between 0 to 2 and has like no access to any kind of help when it comes to childcare. And like I said, 62% are either empty nesters completely or haven't had children yet. And there's another 10%, or well, actually it's another 12% in there whose kids are 12 to 16, so arguably don't really have those child care necessities that is driving them for flexible working either. I think the research that we do around D&I and the trends and things like that we see also really help us engage with employers. You know, a lot of it's all around research and data, understanding your market. I think that's the biggest thing for any startup, is understanding where the need is and how you can drive those conversations, and research and data is key. For us, we're 6-7 months in now to our D&I research, and the findings, you know, about who it is that's actually engaging with the platform, engaging with our employers, and how people are actually looking at flexible working. It is so interesting. I mean, like I say, I've already said there 62% aren't parents, or have not got active childcare requirements. You know, one in 3 of our audience has a BAME heritage. 1 in 5 is from the LGBTQ communities. 1 in 10 is disabled. So it really is about showcasing that actually it's not about ticking a box. It's about being inclusive. It's about being diverse, and it's about moving with the requirements that we need as a society on the future of work, on the future of business, and really looking towards what does output mean for businesses of the future, and how we're going to actually reward and pay the people who work for us and help us drive and build our businesses.
That's some really powerful data that you've got there. I mean, if you were to look back over your time sort of to date, what would you do differently?
I think the first year is always the year you spend the most money on stuff you don't need. It's probably like buying in contacts and things like that. When you've got something like, you know, powerful tools like LinkedIn and things like that, now you don't really need to be buying in lead gen and all that kind of stuff. And it was a lesson that we didn't learn. We know now. But in that first year, I think I probably would have stayed, I definitely would have hired Helen Miller sooner if I could have found her sooner. Because she's kind of like me and her partners in crime on Find Your Flex and how we drive it. And she did, I think we were about 8 months old, 8-9 months old before she came on board with us. It would have been nice to have her a bit sooner. But yeah, I think, you know, I think it's trying not to be, it's hard, isn't it? Because the last few years we've had, I think startups have had to be incredibly agile and able to pivot. And I think when you first set up a startup, you're kind of so single-minded in what your focus is and what it is you want to achieve. I think you've got to keep a part of yourself that's detached from that, to always see the bigger picture and the different commercial opportunities that could arise from what you're doing. So I think that's the kind of biggest piece of advice that I could give to any startup is try and detach yourself as much as possible as to what the core business message, so that you don't miss out on opportunities elsewhere where you can pivot and when you can offer your solution in a slightly different way.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice, because I think it's always iterating, isn't it, as you're going along with a new business. And
absolutely.
So you talked about Helen a couple of times. So tell us, what is Helen's role in the business? What does she do?
So Helen Miller is our head of marketing and social media, but she is just such an advocate for who we are and what we've done. And in terms of, I guess, she was a nurse, she was a midwife, and once she had children, she found it really difficult to do that kind of role with any type of flexibility. I mean, you're talking a big institution with the NHS, and trying to get them to move the dial on such a big tanker is such a hard thing to do. And she went away, she retrained, she re-careered herself in her mid-30s, like many of us senior women, you know, tend to do, you know, after we've had children. And she, you know, she's always developing herself and in terms of what she can do, what she can achieve. And she's been really influential in kind of where we've sort of steered the ship with Find Your Flex. And yeah, if we made the mistake last year of both being off in the same week, we will never do that again. Yeah.
Like Ian and I, like, we started our business at the end of April last year, and we haven't actually had a week off yet, have we? It's just been like,
we're waiting for Easter right now.
Yeah. You know, we managed to grab a couple of days.
And you'll still be taking your laptop with you.
This is how it goes. Yeah, like we had a couple of days at Christmas, but I think, yeah, it's but to be honest, I think it's that excitement, isn't it? And sort of almost like the drive that you get at the beginning that just keeps you powering on and just keeps you growing. And
I think with Helen, for me, she reins me in, because otherwise I could go off on so many different tangents. So she's learned over the years to say no to me and to give me a steer of what we need to be concentrating on. I think every business, especially if you've got someone with what my brain does, I think, you know, you need somebody there that's gonna slow your roll.
I think so sometimes you could probably identify with that.
Yang, is that what you're trying to say?
Well, it's entrepreneurial, isn't it? That kind of spirit of, oh yeah, we can do this. If you didn't have that about you, you wouldn't be setting up your own business. You wouldn't be a startup anyway. So having somebody to kind of pull that tendency back when you need to focus on the core before you spin off into something else, I think is you need somebody like that in the business to balance you out and keep the focus. And I think Helen is definitely the person that does that for me within Find Your Flex.
I think an old kind of boss of mine, I worked for a company that were a partnership, and I remember him saying, you know, you've got the driver, obviously, haven't you? And I think if the other person is a balancer, that's fine, just as long as they're not the brake. You know, he would say to me that his partner was the brake, and it was like, and you can't have that. I think it is about trying to move forward, but yeah, having that, I guess, that counterbalance can be a good thing.
Yeah, you need it, because like I say, you know, you do need to pivot as a startup, because what you actually go to market with actually might be really, really successful in a, you know, in a different way of promoting it, or a different slightly different usage of what you potentially set out to do. And what you don't want is to miss those opportunities, you know, by not staying agile. And I think that's the problem with big business, you know, that they don't have that ability to be as nimble. And you know, we need to look at, you know, when businesses do grow and get to that side, it's how operationally do you maintain that transformative state. You know, it's about being mutable and all of that kind of stuff, staying in that constant state of reinvention and understanding the different social impacts from around us, the impacts they can have and do to your business. And I think that's how you stay agile, and that's certainly sort of our focus anyway.
Yeah, no, sounds amazing. So how many people do you have on your team now? Like, still keeping it quite lean?
Yeah, I mean, the Find Your Flex business is lean. We're part of a larger group now as well called Globolution, which are made up of a group of different businesses that are all very much focused on the future of work, future of business, which is really exciting. The core Find Your Flex team, I think there's about 12 of us at the minute. Wow. So, you know, a mix of sales, marketing, and PR, because obviously, you know, one of the biggest parts of our business is the lobbying side, is that we do have, you know, a really, I think that societal change piece is embedded in our culture, and everybody in the business is really passionate about that. So in everything that we do, yes, we're a job board, but actually we are fundamentally striving for societal change and change in our lifetime. So everybody in the business has that passion, and I think that's part and parcel of what we do and how we win new businesses, bringing businesses along for the ride with us. And I think they get quite excited about being part of the lobbying side and that push for change as well.
Yeah, totally.
So in terms of how you bring your team together and how you identify the right people to bring into your business, how do you go about finding somebody that's a good fit for your business?
We personally have maybe a 2 or 3 step interview process, and a lot of it, the majority is between me and Helen, and we kind of, I think when we first started recruiting, there was an element of trial and error in there. Not everybody can work remotely full time. You know, they come from a corporate environment and think they want to work in a home working remote environment. This is obviously before COVID, but actually the mindset to do it and to stay focused and to stay driven can be really hard. So I think that's one of the areas for us is to try and I guess draw out the values and whether or not the passion is going to be able to offset and to keep you driven in a situation where, you know, you might be, you know, and this is again pre-COVID, on your own a lot of the time and trying to keep yourself motivated because you're not face to face with your teammates. I think since COVID's happened, I think a lot of people will be shocked that they can work remotely from home and still stay motivated. And I think those are the people where, you know, if businesses start making them return to the office, they're going to have that push, they're going to have that really push me, pull you kind of issues in returning to work, and maybe, you know, we'll do better at picking up some like really good salespeople and things like that. It's just about attitude and culture and passion and just trying to identify that in the interview process. But like I say, when we first launched, it was definitely trial and error. Because it was kind of not done before. technology has been key to keeping everybody together and making sure that people who do come in are completely engaged with what we're doing, and making sure that we've got those conversations between sales and marketing and PR all the time, so everybody's aware of the story, the narrative, and what we're doing as a business, because there are so many touch points. And, you know, I think when we were deep into COVID, obviously we were concerned about people's mental health, because a few of us lived completely on their own. So we were making sure that we had, you know, 2 or 3 team meetings a week, so that they had that break from the monotony, they had that contact. And I think that's it. I think, you know, the biggest thing when it is a remote team is keeping that connectivity. So making sure that the technology you're using really allows you to do that. So obviously we use Slack, so everyone's texting each other all day, and we have Zoom for our team meetings, and we use HubSpot as our CRM, and then that's quite open. Everybody else can see what everyone else is doing and can still learn from the other stuff that people are putting out there. So it's just about that connectivity, I think, making sure people, you know, fit.
You touched on culture there when you were talking about bringing people on board. How would you describe the culture that you guys have?
I think our culture is very much around passion and around leadership and about, like I say, societal change. We all have major pride in our work. We're all about people. I think we're all people. I think that's kind of our culture. It's about genuinely striving for change, and I think that's got to be key above everything, because we're not an Indeed. We couldn't just be, you know, pick up the phone to someone and say, oh, stick a job on our job board, because that's not really what it's about. It is about how we can empower businesses and empower brands to really change the way they're thinking about this, you know, the culture within their environment and what they're offering as an employer, and the benefit that they can give to society by offering flexible working, and how much more accessible to make the workplace. It's around, you know, that inclusion piece, and you know, is your business ethical in that sense? And I think everybody who comes into our business needs to have that appetite. So I think that very much then drives the culture of who we are and what we're trying to deliver. It is an emotive piece. You couldn't just come and work with us if you think you're just going to pick up the phone and bag out calls. You wouldn't sell, because it's not who we are or what we do. It is about that societal change piece.
And I guess it's come sort of, I mean, like you say, like with COVID, so much of this has changed, hasn't it? And, you know, companies maybe that would have been totally rigid about this a year, you know, gone, are now having to rethink their model. And, you know, we're certainly working with a lot of companies at the moment that are looking at hybrid model, you know, remote model, you know, like it's just about trying to get it right, isn't it? And
yeah.
You know, I think,
and there'll be no one model that works for every business, you know, but I think it's those businesses who do return to being rigid, who want to see that there's somebody there, and presenteeism and all of that kind of stuff. But those are the businesses that won't be here in 10 years' time. They just won't be.
Yeah, because the talent won't stay. Well, I think this shift has happened, and it's allowed us to look at life, and
yeah, but they just won't be able to access new talent. We already know that Gen Z and those guys coming through, that they don't want, you know, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, to stay with the same employer for the next 50 years of their lives. They want to join businesses who actually have, you know, some corporate and social responsibility. And like, that's really important now. You know, we've got climate change and everything that you know, not just young people, but I think a lot of people have become a lot more aware of, certainly over the last year, of the different things that we can face in our lifetime. And I think, you know, businesses need to look at their whole life cycle and look at who they are. And, you know, they're not going to attract new talent or the best talent if they're not thinking about the future of work, the future of business, the future of society, the future of the world.
Yeah, totally. So if you, like, you know, sort of had to give sort of one piece of advice to someone that might be sort of like, you know, really questioning their sort of, you know, path from here, and wanted to set something up like a new business, what one piece of advice would you give to them?
Just do it. I didn't have a business plan. I didn't have a model. I didn't do all the legwork. And, you know, there'll be certain points in that first year where I thought, oh, I should have looked into this. But it's about having the confidence in yourself and actually the bollocks to do it, because it's a really big thing to set up your own company, to just go it alone. And it's really scary. But I think, you know, you can't regret what you haven't done. And, you know, you need to just do it. you'll learn as you go, you know, and there's people out there, you know, there's mentors out there that will help you for free of charge, that, you know, if you're engaging with people on LinkedIn and things like that, people are really willing to help because they've been there, they've done it, and they'll try and help you to avoid the obstacles. I think I've mentored about 4 new startups in the last 2 years, and, you know, they're doing really well, and it's just about being able to pass on, you know, those pitfalls and things like that. But yeah, I mean, that's my biggest piece of advice, is just do it.
Love that. I mean, I think your energy as well is just so totally obvious for what you're doing. And I think that for me, like, that is always what I think carries you through, is when you have that depth of passion, you know, and you're talking to clients, they see that. It's what they buy at the end of the day, isn't it? You know,
it's going to stand me in good stead when I finally get my political aspirations going and I'm Prime Minister. There we go.
Love it. Go for it. Definitely. Don't hold yourself back.
So, has there been any sort of either business book or podcast or any sort of bit of advice that you've been given yourself that you want to share with everybody? What would you recommend?
I didn't get any advice in those early days. I think I'm too much of my own sort of person to do it. I didn't read any business books or podcasts. I don't know. Podcasts were probably about in 2017. I'm not really that way inclined. I don't know. Like I say, I think, you know, if you've got an idea, just run with it. I think that's literally the top and bottom of all I can say. I didn't do the whole pre-research, pre-plan. I'm probably not the best person to talk to about that kind of stuff. Obviously, there's going to be some industries where you need to have that research and all of that stuff done prior to launch, because you're going to need funding. I self-funded this whole venture. You know, the money I'd put aside to be off on maternity leave, I didn't, and I put into the business and launching the business. You got to take that leap of faith sometimes, though, don't you? So I think I'm very much my own person, and I think that, you know, the initial business is very much me and my passion and my drive versus a clear and distinct plan.
Good for you. Good for you.
And is there a particular, like a brand or a business that's really sort of inspired you? I mean, who really does the flex well that you've seen out there?
Do you know what? All of the ones that currently work with us are obviously all brilliant, because they're doing the first thing, is that they're putting their neck out there, and that they're trying something new for a lot of them, and you know, they're trying to figure out what works for their business, because it is a learning curve, and you've got to bring along your hiring managers and your team managers in terms of, you know, it can't just be a top decision. You've got to disseminate it down the line. You've got to bring everybody on board with you, because a lot of these managers will never have managed it, you know, an agile or an outsourced team at any point in their life. So there's a lot of training and education that goes with it. And I think all of the businesses that are currently on board with us are doing a solid job at changing and transforming their businesses in that sense. I think in terms of other businesses that we're speaking to, I'm absolutely blown away by Emis Group and Covia. I think those guys at the minute are genuinely looking at their whole business, not just their business, the industries that they work in, and actually look at how they change for the better, but not just their business, but how they can make that societal impact on their local communities and on the broader world and environment. And I think they're really inspiring.
Wow, okay. Sounds good. We'll have to check that out.
Yeah, indeed.
So if you had to sort of like have a view as to where you're going over the next sort of couple of years, like what's the aspiration? Where is the business going?
I think we're going to be going in a few directions, but the main sort of heading is all about future of business, future of work. So we launched recently our Power Hour consultancy sessions, which are sort of one-on-one talk therapy sessions with businesses or hiring managers or people within businesses that are struggling with this new way of working and how to work. And you know, they've been really successful. So I think the consultancy side will definitely remain. I think we're also looking at how we can be impactful from I guess an automation side of things. I guess we want to be kind of a resource and a research tool for businesses on how do they adapt to automation? How do they do that and still be inclusive and ethical? I think, you know, that's going to be the biggest shift. We're already seeing it now with the likes of Asda, Sainsbury's, ASOS and Boohoo making these big decisions to remove a lot of jobs from the high street or from their warehouses and things like that, or from their admin teams, and basically automating it, you know, and the impact on that, and certainly that we've seen in the last couple of months, is on white women aged 45 plus and aged 18 to 25. It's having a massive impact on those communities. So we're about to launch a new pilot which very much looks at how we can recareer these people actually into automation. So we're going to take them and take a cohort, and we're going to completely retrain them to be full stack software engineers, and then plug them back into
then if it all goes horribly wrong.
Absolutely. Well, this is it, because I think, you know, we've got to look at what the future of work is, and, you know, and I think the problem with automation is that it's not green. I think people just think digital, they think the cloud, they think, oh well, you know, that's clean, that's part of our CSS, but it's not. You know, if automation and if digital was, you know, a country in terms of the size of the pollution it gives to the planet, it would be the 6th largest country in the world. Wow. I mean, that's saying something. And when businesses aren't looking at digital and automation and looking at green and their, you know, their climate change, their responsibilities to humanity, you know, that you know, they're in direct conflict with each other. So we've been kind of testing out what that looks like, and whether or not, you know, when these women are trained, when these, you know, these cohorts start coming through, how we can offer that as a green solution. And I'm kind of looking at green shared services. So I think Find Your Flex is kind of on a route almost to some kind of green shared service, certainly in technology, and then we'll just see where it goes from there. But that's kind of the current roadmap.
Wow, that's a whole other conversation, isn't it?
It is.
It's exciting. I mean, you've knitted sort of throughout the conversation today, you've knitted some brilliant stats in there about flexible working and the way it's moving. Is there anything else you can sort of tell us about that, and what other things that you're seeing in terms of uptake and the way things are moving?
There's definitely been a lift. There's been a shift. I mean, the last pre-COVID, I mean, the 18 to 25-year-old age group just was, you know, it was only 3% of our audience share. Whereas now we're looking, it's 21% of our audience share. So it's had significant growth over the last 12 months. 30% of our audience is 45 plus. And like I said, that the landscape of who within that age group is applying has massively changed in the last couple of months. Like I said, white women being disproportionately affected by all these changes with automation. Obviously the government were aware of that, because there was a 10-year kind of automation plan, I think, for businesses anyway. So we knew that women were going to be disproportionately affected because of the types of roles that would go to automation. And I just think that timeline is just drastically shortened. So, and we're seeing some of that now. Because we are all at home, we are all buying online, we are all doing a lot of our stuff online. So it's about how we, I guess, as a nation pivot to redeploy these people, and how businesses pivot to redeploy them so that they don't get left behind. Because I think we're not just going to be stuck here with one generation being left behind. There's going to be lots of different age and talent pools that are left behind throughout this whole process. And it's how we really deal with that. Yeah, I think that's one of the sort of the biggest areas. We saw the 35 to 44 age group, which was always one of our biggest pre-COVID. That kind of sort of dropped a little bit, but sort of maintained itself at around 20% audience share. And I think, just obviously anecdotally, I think that's the biggest age group with young children these days. I think in terms of women being a little bit older, having their children, I think they will not have wanted to rock the boat so much in terms of asking for flexible working or moving jobs within the last 12 months of the climate, because not knowing which businesses are still going to be here. You know, unfortunately, we have lost a lot of businesses over the last 12 months. So I think that's been the age group, the core age group, that hasn't really moved. But yes, certainly a big amount of movement. And like I say, you know, one in three of our audience has a BAME heritage. 1 in 5 is from the LGBTQ communities. 1 in 10 is disabled. And I think the reason that those guys, again, somewhat anecdotally, are using the platform, I can only go from what people are sharing in our social groups and things like that, is because businesses who use us can't use us as a tick box, because they get found out. If they come on our site and they promote themselves as flexible, and it turns out that they're not, because our candidates who've applied have got right the way through to the end stage and the job that's been offered hasn't included any kind of flexibility, we then don't work with them anymore. And that's kind of how we work. It's a core value of ours that, you know, you can't just use us as a tick box exercise. We're not just one of those, you know, job boards that you can tag on because it ticks that box. We do work quite closely with our partners to ensure that what we're promoting is flexible. And I think from an inclusion perspective, I think the guys coming on from LGBTQ or who are disabled, it's not about, well, it may not be 100% about that flexibility piece, but it's about the fact that the business is offering it and is being true to it in itself is inclusive. And I guess they're just kind of trying to find a home for themselves, a home away from home that is inclusive. And I think they kind of use the platform because they know that the businesses on the platform are inclusive because they're offering the flexibility.
Yeah, so it's a kind of almost like a go-to place. Like that's what's important.
It's almost like a glass door for diversity and inclusion.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I like that because then you're not having to trawl through all the job boards.
Exactly.
To find that, and it's just that knowing that if you go there, you're going to find what you're looking for straight away.
And I think the other thing for us is our roles are PAYE. So there's no multi-level marketing companies. There's none of these dodgy outfits out there that dress themselves up as flexible working, but actually, you know, I mean, they're not opportunities, are they? They're preying on people, and we took a very early stance on not having those types of opportunities. And I appreciate they work for some people, but it's just not something that we chose to promote.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Good. So how do you think, like, obviously we've done this poll recently on, asking people like what they want, like, so really about asking, employees, candidates, if you like, what do they want going forward from like a working environment? And we asked sort of 4 questions, like fully remote, hybrid, back to the office, and then freedom of choice. And I think we got 3%, which was back to the office. And then you kind of hear, in the press, like you've got Goldman Sachs going, everyone back to the office, and different companies. I mean, what do you think is going to happen? Like if you had to sort of,
I think it'll be a mix. I think companies will have to offer a mix. I think you've got to appreciate that the younger age groups, that's where they do their socialization when they leave college and uni. That's where they find their adult friends. It's where they meet their partners. It's it's as much about their social side as it is about work. So of course those guys are going to potentially want to, I mean, the majority might want to only work from the office 3-4 days a week and have a a day from home, or only do a 4-day week so they can go off traveling and do that kind of stuff as well. I think you've got the older end, which they're whether or not they're winding down or whether or not they're wanting to be more of a mentor, they need the socialization that the office gives. I think the people in the middle, well, that's when life hits us, right? When we're with a squeezed middle, not just on salary, but and on taxes and everything, like with a squeezed middle, because I guess we have the most pressure on us, where we might have the children and we might be also taking care of our parents or our grandparents, and there's things that life throws at us where one minute we might not need flexibility, but the next minute that we do. And it's about how we balance that. And I think businesses, hopefully moving forward, will just be more mindful of life and the daft things that it can throw us, and the serious things like COVID that it can throw us that impact more than one person in the office. And I think it's just a reminder to businesses to see people as people rather than a number on a bottom line, and understanding that actually what works for one isn't going to work for all. And being able to offer the different solutions and just being really, agile in terms of your people policies and how you actually get the best out of people, and how do we make them the most productive, because if they are being productive, then that's a benefit for you just as much as it is for the person.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
I'll get off my soapbox in a minute.
No, we love it. For us, it's a really sort of passionate subject as well, and especially now, like talking to different clients and their views, and like just really sort of starting to see what's going to, like you say, what's going to shape out of this to come. It's really, I
think the biggest thing is it's not one size fits all.
Yeah, I think we would agree with that, wouldn't we?
Absolutely, and also me being a geek for a stat, I really loved some of those insights that you gave us there. I'm going to be going back through writing some of those.
I'll send you over the slide deck.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I think that's actually something that probably the sort of like viewers of hopefully of the the sort of content today will want to know about. So if you have got anything you can send, I think that'll be really useful, and we can.
Yeah, I mean the research polls that we do are completely anonymized on the platform, so it is literally just people's personal preference to leave us that data. They don't have to if they don't want to. But I mean, just in November, we had over 19,000 respondents just in February. So I think people are wanting to educate employers, and that's how we ask for the information. You know, we want to change the landscape of what work is. So like, you know, you need to help us educate employers so that they understand that it isn't just a parent piece, that actually it's much bigger than this, and it's much bigger than, you know, the few people who get to voice what it is. Because, you know, there's people like Jolie Braley and Mother Pucker and, you know, Ian Dinwiddie, people like that who are really, you know, driving it from a parent perspective, but actually it's bigger than this. And we need to, I think the whole time that in Parliament it is the parent narrative, we're not going to see any actual change. Same with the whole, you know, flex from day one campaign that the CIPD did. It's not going to change anything, because the businesses who said no at 6 months are still going to say no from day one. You know, it's smoke and mirrors, and it's not actually any real impactful change, and that's what we're striving for.
Yeah, I mean, it is true innovation, really, isn't it, to make these changes? But something good, hopefully, that might have come out of the last 12 months and the pandemic. Let's hope.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, thanks again for today. It's been really great chatting to you, and I know we've been like itching to get you on for a good long time now. So, yeah, really good to meet you, and hopefully we'll stay in touch, and you know, find out what's going on in 6 months' time. Come back and say what's happened. What does this really look like? Yeah,
that would be lovely. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you for coming. Lovely to meet you.
Thank you.